Hello, Ivana. Thank you for joining me today.
Lovely to be here, Mary Jane.
So we're going to do a bit of tapping today around a fear that you have. And I know that you're familiar with EFT, you're a practitioner yourself, so you know the tapping points and you know how it works, so I don't need to explain that. So could you let me know what you'd like to work on today?
Well, I'd like to work on my fear of driving. I have waited a long time to dare start having driving lessons, and there's always a good reason to postpone it. And I think it's going to happen before the end of this year.
Okay. And there's
definitely fear around it.
Okay. And when you think about driving lessons maybe happening quite imminently, what do you feel? What comes up? Panic.
There's a part of me going.
Okay.
Panic.
Tell me about the panic and where you feel it and anything about it, if you can.
It feels like it starts from my stomach and spreads into my chest. It's a bit of a cold panic.
A cold
temperature going through. It's kind of freezing.
Okay. So let's use that, if that's okay, as the setup statement, first of all. So if you could tap on the side of your hand. If I say something that doesn't seem quite right or you want to change it a bit, that's absolutely fine. Just let me know. And I just invite you for a moment to be present with your panic, if that's okay. It's probably not a very comfortable place, but just be present, just sitting with that. Okay. So let's try these words. If you repeat after me. Even though when I think about learning to drive.
Even though when I think about learning to drive.
I feel this cold panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
Feel this cold panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
But right now, I accept that I'm feeling that way.
But right now, I accept that I'm feeling that way.
And I accept myself.
I accept myself.
Is that all right? Do you want anything changed? Okay. If you had to give this panic an intensity out of 10, what would you give it?
It's a funny thing. It's not so obvious. It's like a secret panic, and when I really tune into it, it's a 9.
Okay.
But I don't really feel it intensely. But I know that it's kind of cold panic 9. Something.
Okay. Are you all right to tune into it now?
Yes.
You don't have to go all the way to 9, but get in there a fair way. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to repeat that statement a couple more times, if that's all right. And as ever, if you want anything changed, just let me know. Even though when I think about learning to drive soon.
Even though when I think about learning to drive soon.
I have this cold panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
I have this cold panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
But I choose to accept this panic.
But I choose to accept this panic.
And to accept that this is how I feel.
And to accept that this is how I feel.
Once more. Even though when I think about learning to drive very soon.
Even though when I think about learning to drive very soon.
I have this cold panic running from my stomach into my chest.
I have this cold panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
Normally I can keep it secret.
Normally I can keep it secret.
But right now I choose to feel it and accept it.
But right now I choose to feel it, face it, and accept it.
Well done. Okay. So we're going to tap through the points. Is that okay? Are you still a 9 when you get right in there?
It's kind of 8.
Yeah. I find sometimes the setup statement alone can help things to start shifting. Okay. Learning to drive.
Learning to drive.
Learning to drive very soon.
Learning to drive very soon.
This cold panic.
Cold panic.
This panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
This panic spreading from my stomach into my chest.
This panic.
This panic.
When I think about learning to drive.
When I think about learning to drive.
When I think about being behind the wheel of the car.
When I think about being behind the wheel of the car.
When I think about being behind the wheel of the car on the right-hand side of the car.
When I think about being behind the wheel of the car on the right-hand side of the car. Ooh, yes.
And I'll just explain. So Ivana grew up in Serbia, where they drive on the right, so the wheel would normally be on the left. So that itself has triggered quite a bit there, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm having to use my left hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Having to use my left hand.
And I'm right-handed.
Mm-hmm. Having to use my left hand.
Having to use my left hand.
And I'm right-handed.
And I'm right-handed.
Sitting on the right-hand side.
Sitting on the right-hand side.
Driving on the left-hand side.
Driving on the left-hand side.
It's all the wrong way around.
It's all the wrong way around.
Sitting on the right.
Sitting on the right.
Sitting behind the wheel.
Sitting behind the wheel.
Okay, we're going to go back to the top of the head. Being in control of this car.
Being in control of this car.
Okay, something there then.
I can't do it.
I can't do it.
I can't do it.
I can't drive.
I can't drive.
I can't do it.
I can't do it.
I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
I'll never do it.
I'll never do it.
Being in control of this car.
Being in control of this car.
We have quite the same reaction that time.
Yes. It's like the responsibility. I can control. Maybe I can control. Not even. I'm not even 100% positive that I can control the car and my actions. But on top of that, I have no control over other drivers.
We'll start with your own control. Can I control this car?
Can I control this car?
Can I do all the right things to control?
Can I do all the right things? And there are so many to control this car.
Yeah. And from my training, I quite often use the analogy of learning to drive with learning to work with tapping with someone because there's so much to remember at the end.
So much, yeah.
I
was a bit triggered. Use that analogy.
Can I control the car?
Can I control the car?
Can I control my actions?
Can I control my actions?
It's such a responsibility.
It's such a responsibility.
So much responsibility to myself.
So much responsibility to myself.
And everybody else on the road.
And everybody else on the road.
That responsibility.
That responsibility.
Okay. We're just going to pause, take a breath. Nice. Okay. So you're soon going to be learning to drive, Ivana. What's coming up when I say that?
It's almost like growing up.
Okay.
It's almost like it would be a sign that I've kind of joined the world of responsible adults. It's almost like until I do it, I feel like I'm trying to dodge the responsibility and dodge the world of taking things into my own hands in control.
Okay.
Because of the responsibility, I feel like part of me feels like I'd rather not go there. There's too much responsibility. I've seen what happens to people, to some of my family members.
So we're going to come back to responsibility in just a moment. Can I invite you to tune in, if there's any left, to that cold, panicky feeling that's spreading through your stomach into your chest? Is that there? Is it?
It's about a 5.
Okay.
It's almost like it's saying, I'm taking a break now. I'm taking a break. It even feels, but don't forget I'm here.
I'm going back to my secret place.
Yeah.
Is the feeling of having to be a responsible adult, is that the same? Is that the cold panic, or is it different?
It almost feels like there are circles in the middle. It's having control over the car. There's so many things that I have to think about, do at the same time, be mindful of, and then others in traffic, and then around that it feels like it's fitting into the adult responsibility.
Okay. So out of those 3 rings, which one feels like the one we need to visit?
Surprisingly, I think the responsibility adulthood one.
Okay, that's fine. So what I would, if I can just explain a moment, what I would usually do if Ivana was a client who's coming for this fear, I would actually work for longer on that cold panic feeling. And we would just sit with that for longer, maybe explore if that related to earlier times or other things. And it may be that that would be a whole session working on that cold panic feeling. Sometimes with fears and phobias, it requires working over several sessions. So for the purposes of the demonstration, we are going to move on, but that is how I would work if Anna were, I was going to say real clients, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so this responsibility, can you just imagine yourself in charge of this vehicle on the road, and just tune into that feeling of being a responsible adult, or the feeling of not wanting to be a responsible adult. Just notice what is happening there, can you?
I think there's a little bit of a conflict with women driving. Okay. And things that I've heard, picked up on as I was growing up about women drivers.
And I just sense there's quite a bit of emotion there for you.
It feels like anger. I think it's called hidden anger underneath that, and it's almost like, so I've heard comments about women driving. Oh, of course it's a woman driving. She has no idea. Whereas actually, it wasn't always my dad, not necessarily from him, but he's the one who's had accidents.
Yeah. Just tap as you're talking.
So it's almost like, so my mum learned to drive and never drove. My sister-in-law learned to drive, had an accident very early and never drove again. And it's almost like they're proving a little bit that it's safer to be in a passive role and be driven around, when actually, but at the same time, I don't feel comfortable with that passive role, because if I'm passive and I don't drive, then I'm just reaffirming that belief that I've picked up on, that women are not competent drivers, and that really makes me angry. So it's like I'm conflicted. I'm sort of, a little bit of part of me is believing these things, and a part of me is really angry about them and wants to prove them wrong.
Right. Let's work on a bit of that. So I'll try this on for size. Correct me if we need to change something. Even though when I hear people saying women are not good drivers, I feel really angry.
Even though when I hear people saying women are not good drivers, I feel really angry.
But there's a part of me that quite likes the thought of being driven around.
But there's a part of me that quite likes the thought of being driven around, yes.
And I choose right now to accept both these parts of me.
And I choose right now to accept both these parts of me.
Is that okay? Yeah. Even though a part of me feels so angry when people make disparaging comments about women driving.
Even though a part of me feels so angry when people make disparaging comments about women driving.
There's a part of me that really quite likes being a passenger and being driven around.
There's a part of me that really quite likes being a passenger and being driven around and not having that responsibility.
Having the responsibility. But I choose right now to accept both these parts of me.
But I choose right now to accept both these parts of me.
This part of me that feels so angry.
This part of me that feels so angry.
When people talk about women drivers.
When people talk about women drivers.
Versus this part of me that actually likes not having the responsibility of driving.
And there's this part of me that actually likes not having this responsibility of women driving.
I accept both these parts for now.
I accept both these parts.
Although I can't see how they could ever be reconciled.
Although I can't see how they could ever be reconciled.
Women drivers.
Women drivers.
Oh, makes me so angry.
Makes me so angry.
I feel this anger in my, where do you feel it?
I feel this anger in my throat.
All this anger.
My fists as well.
Anger in my throat and my fists.
Anger in my throat and my fist. And I can almost see myself holding the wheel and angry fists.
My angry fists holding the wheel.
Angry fists holding the wheel.
Stupid comments about women drivers.
Stupid comments about women drivers.
You still angry?
Less so.
Okay. Do you think you have a belief that women are not such good drivers?
Yes, I'm aware that it's not mine.
Yeah. Okay. This belief that I hold.
This belief that I hold.
I don't want to hold.
That I don't want to hold.
It's not my belief.
It's not my belief.
Oh, what happened there, Ivana?
It's released.
You feel different? Mm-hmm. You still feel angry?
No.
Okay.
I feel like I don't have to hold on to it.
Being driven around.
Being driven around. It's a bit actually frustrating being driven around when I think about it again.
Yeah.
Because you always depend on somebody else who's not always quite happy to drive me around.
Okay. This frustration of having to ask.
Having to ask.
I feel this frustration in my...
I feel this frustration. I feel this frustration in my legs.
Okay. Anything about that feeling in your legs?
Just like I want to move. I don't want to have to beg sometimes to be driven at a certain time somewhere. I don't want to be dependent. I want to move.
This frustration in my legs.
This frustration in my legs.
Frustration at being dependent.
This frustration at being dependent.
Frustration at having to rely on someone else.
This frustration of having to rely on someone else.
It's frustration at having to beg.
This frustration at having to beg.
This feeling in my legs that I want to move.
This feeling in my legs that I want to move.
I want to go when I'm ready.
I want to go when I'm ready and where I want to go, and stay for how long? As long as I want to stay.
I want to be independent.
I want to be independent. Even if that means taking the responsibility.
It's my next question. So how does the responsibility feel right now?
It feels like a relief.
Let's just stop there. Take a big breath. Let's allow all that to integrate and settle. Okay, so taking responsibility, being a responsible adult behind the wheel of a car, a responsible female adult, in fact. How does that feel?
It feels possible.
How possible, if we were to give possible a percentage? How possible is it now?
70% possible.
Wow, that's pretty high, actually. I mean, I didn't ask you that question at the beginning, but I don't think.
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't ever so high. Okay, so 70% possible.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. And I honestly think that doing anything that is potentially dangerous, it's actually good to be a bit scared.
Yes, and I thought I can live with that 30% of myself feeling a little bit on alert. Yeah,
much safer to be on alert than to be half asleep.
Yes. Yeah. And I just felt this part of me who felt it's safer to be driven around and, you know, not taking that responsibility. She was quite kind of, well, it's not quite nice. It's really frustrating, actually. And I'm kind of fed up with it. And I want to take things into my hands. I want to take the wheel into my own hands. And
that was quite a big shift, because you were saying, yeah, it's actually really quite nice, you know, having someone drive me.
That's how much it's frustrating.
So we used a few different techniques there. We did our basic tapping recipe. I invited you to do tap and talk, but I think you were just tapping here and I tapped through the points, so that's fine. I also used something called parts therapy, when Ivana had this conflict between being angry about women drivers and this liking being driven around, so we kind of used the two different things going on there. So I really liked her analogy of the circles. So the outer one being the responsible adult, and then the other drivers. And actually, I think when we had a chat earlier, we thought it was going to be the other drivers that was the thing.
Yes, when I tuned into it, it's more of that responsibility, becoming an adult, being that woman that I really want to be, that capable woman in every aspect, including the driving aspect.
Very good. And what I'd invite you to do now, Ivana, is think of things that you've done that were kind of a big leap for you. That could be anything. I mean, that can be something you studied. That can be, well, you've moved countries. That's generally a big leap. Having children. Also things like, you know, sometimes people have done a charity marathon or a really long bike ride, or something that you would have thought was impossible. So tune into the feeling of accomplishing something that felt like a big leap at the time, and keep your focus on that. You could maybe keep coming back to that feeling every time you start getting jittery about driving.
It's a great analogy. Marrying again was a big leap. Moving countries to be married was a big leap of faith. Having children was starting a business was a big leap of faith, and just noticing that I can do it, and how much I've benefited from all of these big leaps and the risks that I decided to take. It's just wonderful.
Fantastic. My pleasure. Thank you. We stop.